Yo, hell yeah. Wyatt begins in like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yo, welcome to Wyatt. And I'm your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans. Grr, woof, goddammit, woof, 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 woof. Hi, I said hi to all my YouTubers out there. If you like what you hear and if you like what you see, just click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. And because I knows you loves me, give me some likes. And also, as always, leave me comments. I always like to know what you're thinking. You know what I'm saying? Well, oh, hell yeah. Today's Wyatt shines the spotlight on Mr. Joshua R. Pangborn, the award-winning horror actor, filmmaker, and author who unapologetically tells queer, fat, and sex-positive stories for television and the movies. Yeah. His new book is titled Homo Phobias. What a clever play on words. And y'all, Homophobias is sexy, creepy, and will give you a major case of the heebee-jeebies. It scared the hell out of me. So hi, let's find out more. So without further ado, Wyatt, I said Wyatt, welcomes Mr. Joshua R. Pangborn. Talk at me, my friend. How the hell are you?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me back here. I love it. So thank you.
I had, we were talking a little bit off air. I had such a delight putting this show together. We're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get into it.
I can't wait.
Okay. Now, you're the consummate multi-hyphenate. You're an award-winning horror actor, filmmaker, author, and founder of Sidekick Productions, which is focused on telling unapologetically queer, fat, and sex-positive stories on film and television. Now, let me tell you something. I always feel good when I do that. I am in awe of your talent, my friend. I is, because your body of work is thought-provoking, inventive, imaginative, and bold. So first question, what's your muse? What motivates and inspires you?
I would have to say that's a good question. I think that I'm just inspired by the world around me, and that's a really generic thing to start off with, but I really am. I mean, I see so many amazing people in my life that I want to make the center of stories, and I am myself included. I won't deny that I'm inspired by myself sometimes, but I think it's important to look at the people around you and say, you know what, you are amazing singers, actors, writers. Let's find ways to celebrate you and tell stories about you and people like you that no one else is telling. And because of that, no one is still telling them. And after over 10 years that I've been doing this, so I will continue to tell those stories. And I'm inspired to keep doing so because no one is doing that. So.
You know what? I'm so glad you said that, Joshua, because it's so important to be unapologetically yourself, your authentic self, because back in the day, I used to do stand-up comedy, right? And I was pretty good regionally, but I wanted to go national. But the reason why I couldn't do it was because I wanted to do LGBTQ material, and this was in the 90s, and that was just poo-pooed. So I very well may start doing it next year again, but you have to be comfortable in who you are in your skin, your own skin. And you really do that with the work that you're doing. And we're so glad that you do it. Now,
it's hard. I'm not going to pretend it's not hard, because I think if we did the stories we do in a more mainstream manner,
Uh-huh.
less queer, less fat embracing. Um, I think that we would have uh, an audience and be more accepted in the wider community. But that's not what motivates me. What
Uh-huh.
motivates me is doing the stories my way with my voice and the voices of those that I want to celebrate. So,
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Define fat positive and sex positive for our audience, for those who
sure,
might not know what those terms mean.
sure. A lot of people use the words body positive as opposed to fat
Uh-huh.
positive.
Right.
I think that body positive has been co-opted by the fitness community at large, and it's rich.
Uh-huh.
If you go to body positive on Instagram, for example, you'll see lots of these very 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 athletic people posting about how they're body positive because they're celebrating their bodies, and
Right.
that's great. I support them completely, but that's not what I think the original term meant. A lot of creators, I think, are switching to fat positive because it's celebrating um, not necessarily being fat, although there's nothing wrong with being fat, but it's
Uh-huh.
celebrating the fact that you have a fat body and you are not ashamed of it. And some people might be trying to change their fat body and be more straight sized. Some people might be comfortable with how they look, and they want to they like that and they want to champion that. And some people are somewhere in between. But either way,
Uh-huh.
it's about not being ashamed of being fat and celebrating that anybody who is fat can do anything that anyone else can do. In my work as a filmmaker and as an author, that means putting fat voices in lead roles, putting fat voices in roles where you have romantic entanglements and all, which are
Uh,
not things that you typically see in a modern and a mainstream um, story. So,
and
and
sex.
then, oh, so sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. What about sex positive?
Sure. So sex positive is, at least the way I view it, it's about not being ashamed of sexuality, not being ashamed of having sexuality.
Uh-huh.
And when it comes to telling queer stories, it means allowing your queer characters to be sexual. And that doesn't mean that they have to be sexual. They could be asexual, but asexuality is still a
Ah.
sexuality, as opposed to having a character who is queer but never actually is queer or authentically queer. Um,
Hmm.
I use this example a lot of times, but Modern Family is a great example of a show which, in many
Mhm.
ways, did check a lot of really good diversity boxes and really did have good representation. But at the same time, if you look at their queer representation, it is extremely safe and extremely lacking in any sort of sexuality. Like, these are two men who profess to love each other, but they have no sort of um, sense of physicality between the two of them.
Ah,
And the same thing for a show like Mike and Molly, for example, as well, which is about a
right.
cishet couple. But again, Mike and Molly are two fat characters, and they are married and they love each other very much, but you almost never see them do anything at all together physically. Occasionally they
That's
will
true.
kiss on the lips, but all they do is sleep in the same bed, I Live Lucy style.
Mm,
Same with Modern Family. So
right.
it's about having sexuality and not being ashamed of it, and it's also about celebrating and embracing the range of sexuality and sexual expression, and that includes through kinks and through celebrating the way that people express their physical love for one another.
Mm. Well put. Thank you, Joshua. Okay, we had the hors d'oeuvres, so to speak. Now for the main course. Homophobias, your just released collection of short stories. Man, the volume is getting rave reviews. Congratulations on a winning body of work. I believe, man, homophobia is different and rather unique in the marketplace. So don't go breaking your hand, patting yourself on the back.
I should try not to, but I'm so grateful that it's out, and I'm so grateful that people are enjoying it and liking it. I I've always wanted to put together a collection of stories,
Uh-huh.
and someday maybe even a novel, but it's also a little bit more nerve-wracking than making a movie or a TV series because
Right.
it's all you. It's you, and maybe if you're lucky enough to have an editor, your editor as well. So
Mhm.
if people didn't like it, I could easily blame Defeer. He's
Mhm.
responsible. He was the editor. No, but in seriousness, I'm very very lucky that people are enjoying this collection of stories. And I do think that it is a collection of horror stories that people have not seen things like this before.
I know the feeling, my friend, because I'm writing the sequel to Shattered right
Oh, I can't
now.
wait.
And thank you so much. And I want to thank you for your support, you know, with Shattered. So tell me, my friend, well, let me put it to you this way. Give us the 25 word or less elevator pitch for homophobias. We're going to delve into it much deeper later. So just give us a 25 word pitch. And listen, I'm going to be counting down. I'm going to be
I shall
counting them.
try. All right then.
Okay.
25 words. All right. Homophobias is a queer, fat positive collection of short horror stories that focus on the quest for love and all the twisted and terrible ways it goes wrong.
That's good. That's so good.
I like that.
Congratulations.
I didn't
Yeah.
come up with that till just now, so I'm very proud of myself.
You see what I did for you?
You did. You gave me a great elevator pitch. I am so grateful to be here just for that now. So
Okay. As we both know, selecting the right title and the right cover
hmm,
can be crucial in getting the eyes on the book and which would which hopefully rather leads to sales. So first of all, homophobia is the title is such a deliciously clever play on words. Man, the cover is striking, mesmerizing. It just grabs you like this, and you can't seem to stop looking at it. So, what's the story behind both? What were the elements involved in the concept?
absolutely. I think with anthologies and short story collections, it's a little hard sometimes to know what's inside
Uh-huh.
because uh, the title doesn't always tell you what the whole collection sort of is. Or a lot of times horror novels especially are these long phrases these days where they're sort of like the the heart that beats is under the tree. That's not quite a title, but it's similar to some titles out there that are making the rounds. And again, no criticism of anybody else's title, but for me, when I was putting a book out, I wanted to make sure that people knew what they were getting. And for me, it's
Uh,
important that people knew that they were getting a collection of queer, fat positive horror stories. I originally wanted to
uh,
do um, Queer for Fear or Scream Queens, but unfortunately, Brian Fuller and Ryan Murphy both took those titles already, so I couldn't
uh-huh.
take those.
No.
So I was like, you know what? What if we did Homo Phobias? Homo for gay, phobias
Mhm.
for fear. It reclaims a word that's really bad,
Exactly. Exactly.
and also does is very clear about what it is. And then that meant I had to figure out how to do the cover image. And I said, well, I want people to know that this is a collection about fat characters. And
Mm.
so I knew that we wanted to do something that featured a fat person on the cover. And it was a queer collection, so it would be probably a fat male presenting individual on the cover. So that's where that came from. And my editor and I talked back and forth about how best to present that. And we ended up on this idea that we have right here.
It's amazing, amazing. Congratulations on that. Okay. Our good buddy James Butler gave his critique of homophobias, and James is the founder of the Bears Network, the influential and popular online destination for and about the bear big boy community. Do you want to know what he said?
I would love to hear what he said.
Okay, he said this, and I quote, Get ready to dive into a twisted world of queer horror as writer and filmmaker Joshua R. Pangborn explores identity, fear, and love in his thrilling debut anthology. From fact-positive representation to dark cinematic storytelling, this collection pushes boundaries and embraces the terrifyingly beautiful. He's a hell of a writer. End quote. So what do you think about that?
I am over the moon. James, thank you so much. Those words are beautiful about the collection. It is pretty much exactly what I would want people to get out of this collection. So I am so grateful that you got that out of that, first of all, and that you said that about this, because it means a lot. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, Joshua, later in the show, you're going to give us the full Monty on homophobias. We're going to talk about Sidekick Productions as well. But for now, because the Wyatt audience is nosy, we want to know a little bit about your backstory. So are you ready?
I'm ready. Bring it on.
Where were you born and raised?
I was born in a small town called, I was born in Plattsburgh, New York, which is a slightly small, very small city in upstate New York, about an hour south of Montreal, Canada.
Oh, man.
And I was raised in Redford, New York, which is 30 minutes outside of Plattsburgh, which is a town of about 250 people. So,
wow, small town.
Very small town.
So what was life like in a small town?
It was very quiet, very, it left me a lot of room for imagination. I did a lot of things with myself because I didn't have a lot of friends, because the way that it works basically in small towns like that, your friends are all at school with you, but outside of that, it's like your school is comprised of like 6 or 7 towns. So it's not like you live near a lot of your friends, because you see them at school, but you don't live near them. Okay. And if you have a car, it's not so bad. But what 10-year-old has a car? So
that's true.
So I had a lot of time by myself to create ideas and images, and I was a very creative and imaginative child who was probably a little bit lonely, to be honest.
Right. That leads me to my next question. As a little boy, a little nipper, what 3 qualities, characteristics, attributes best describe you?
I would say bookworm. I read a lot. I had a lot of books, and I read them all multiple times sometimes. Some of the books I know I've read at least 5 or 6 times in my collection. So bookworm, imaginative, and probably a nerd, because I was a nerd. So, and I still am.
Now, did you get into any kind of trouble?
I didn't. I never, ever, ever, ever had detention ever in my life.
That's good.
I was so good, I guess. I was a goody two shoes. I guess there was this one time that I could have gotten in trouble, I guess, when I was in 3rd grade. I was being bullied by somebody on the bus. And my parents always told me to fight back. But I'm a very short person. I'm 5'3" as an adult. So as a child, I was quite short. So what I was being bullied on the bus. I don't remember what I was being bullied about, because I was very young. But I do remember that I took my Ninja Turtle lunchbox and I broke it against the guy's head. He was in 6th grade. I was in 3rd grade. And I broke it against his head. And I was very sad that I broke my lunchbox.
Really.
And it's probably the most violent thing I've ever done in my life as a 3rd grader. I didn't get in trouble for it, but we all had to sit down and we had to apologize to each other. Him for bullying me for breaking my lunchbox against his head. So.
Oh, I bet you he didn't bully you again, did
he? He didn't. He did not, actually. So it did work standing up for myself at that time. So
good for you. Gave him a beat down. Now, my friend, it's time to immerse ourselves in the creepy but sexy homophobias. Look, I love collections of short stories, and I'm a horror sci-fi buff. This scared the heebie-jeebies out of me. I mean, it just really, really did. So tell us more. What more do you want us, besides the elevator pitch, which you did so well, what more would you want us to know about it, about homophobias?
Sure.
More about the synopsis, for example.
I think each of the stories is very much the quest for love. It's not necessarily romantic love. Sometimes it's friendship love, and sometimes it's familial love. But it spans the breadth of the queer search for family and friendship,
Okay.
And all the ways that that can go wrong. The stories themselves are a collection, a mixture of supernatural and non-supernatural horror. And it's very much a collection that is almost entirely told through the perspective of a queer male identifying person. We do have one story that is told through the perspective of the character's mother, and other than that, they are all told through the perspective of the queer male identifying person. And we break it up into 3 chapters. Basically, we have 9 stories total in the collection. Each of the sections is 3 stories each, and it's madness, mothers, and magic. So the first 3 stories deal with themes of madness in particular. The second 3 stories deals with themes of mother and related to the mother, and the third collection of stories is about magic and the use of magic in the quest for love.
We're going to get into those sections a little bit later, particularly madness, which was my favorite section. I'll tell you that later. But for right now, Joshua, tell us about your creative process in writing the book.
So I was approached by Defeer, who is the editor for the collection, after he and I worked on my film, The Brooklyn Butcher. And he said, you have such great ideas. Have you ever thought about putting them together in a collection of stories? And I had, but I'd never actually done it. And there was a lot of work involved in publishing a book. So I was just like, I don't have a lot of time for this, to do all the nitty gritty formatting and structuring and all the stuff that you need to do well and you need to take a lot of time for. And Defeer said, well, why don't I come on as your editor and help you make this book happen? I had worked with Defeer on a collection that he put together, which was Theater While Fat, which was an interview collection about fat actors who had experiences in the world of theater. So I knew he could do this already because he's already done editing before. He said he gave me the freedom to just write the stories, and I didn't have to worry about any of the nitty gritty details about putting them all together, which was so freeing to just be able to sit there and write. And what I did was I went to all of the films that I haven't written yet that are in my head, and I said, let's take those and put them down on paper, because I want to get the stories out there, and maybe someday I'll film them, but I'd rather at least get them out there before I forget them or before something else comes along to replace them. I had just worked with, I just read a collection, a story from Brandon Perez Sanchez, who is a filmmaker based out of Providence. He's a queer horror filmmaker. And he did this. He's taken some of his screenplays and he's adapted them into novels. And I just read his book, The White Bishop. And I thought, you know what? He's doing this. What a great idea. Let me do the same thing. So I went back into my mind filing cabinet and I took out a lot of the stories that I wanted to write as scripts. And I started to write them as short stories. And voila, it happened. And I was very excited about what came out.
What is Defeer's last name, and would you spell his name for us, please?
Sure. Defeer Jackson. Defeer Jackson is Dhafir, and then Jackson, Jackson.
He's
a wonderfully talented artist. So he can do a lot of things. He's actually quite talented. He's a lovely actor as well. And he's put out 2 collections of his own that I highly encourage folk to read. These are interviews. One was Theater While Black, and the other was Theater Wild Fat, and both are about interviewing folk in the world of theater who are either identifying as a person of color or as a fat person who is and how their experiences are while being in that identity in the world of theater.
All right, the fear, you have an open invitation to come on, Wyatt.
I will let him know because he should be here because he is so talented, and I really want to see people celebrate his work as much as they are celebrating everyone else's. So,
And he's been on my radar as well. So yeah, he's a very talented individual. Okay. Now, Joshua, I'm stealing my next two questions from your recent The Bears Network interview because they're so perceptive and elucidating. Now, don't tell Mr. Butler I'm doing this, okay? This is just between me and
between
you.
us, don't worry.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, here's the first question. Your book intertwines camp, sex, and horror. What inspired you to explore these themes together?
Sure. Hopefully my answer doesn't differ too much from what I gave to James, but we will find out. Camp, sex, and horror. For me, camp and horror always go hand in hand to begin with. I think that it's hard not to have. I think that the best horror allows for moments of laughter. I think that the best horror allows for breaks between the fear, because otherwise it's too much, and you need that tension and release. I mean, it goes back to this is my academic side coming out. It goes back to ancient Greece with the idea of tension and release done through through catharsis, through the idea of how their tragedies work, basically. So I think that horror is very much is an extension of the way that the Greeks viewed theater in many ways. So camp is just so much. There's with horror in general. There's a little bit of there's a little element of queerness in it to begin with, baked in just because of that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, also you have really silly situations. I mean, like you've got child's play, for example. You're terrified of a little doll, and it's terrifying. The actors do a wonderful job of selling their fear of Chucky, but at the end of the day, it's a doll. Just pick it up and kick it or something.
Right.
It's a doll. It's ridiculous, but it's also, some people are terrified, and it touches on these elements that really make us unite us in many ways, because people have fears of dolls. It's a very natural fear. I went to college with a good friend who was terrified of dolls, and she had no reason to be terrified of them. It's just every time she saw a doll, she freaked out, and it wasn't because she saw child's play. It was just it was an innate fear that she had in her.
Right.
Or the fear of clowns. I mean, we have all of these things that we all fear, and at the end of the day, it's kind of silly. Like, I am terrified of snakes, for example.
Me too.
Why?
Yeah.
Snakes are just snakes. I mean, it's a whiny little thing that you can just pick it up and throw it. I mean, well, it depends on how big it is. If it's an anaconda, no, that's not happening. But
no.
But so, and I think in general, the horror genre also embraces sex and sexuality in a way that no other mainstream genre does. In some ways it exploits it, but in some ways it celebrates it. And in some ways it also mocks the way that other people view it. Like, a lot of classic 80s movies use the male gaze to an extreme. Or The Substance is a great film that just came out. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Not
Demi
yet.
Moore?
Not yet. I want to, though. Yeah.
You should see it, and you should know very little about it. So cover your ears while I tell your audience what I'm talking about here. But it's a movie about the male gaze, basically, on a woman and how it affects her. But there's a moment at the end with breasts that is so perfect, because it's like the director saying to them, and I'm quoting somebody else here who is a good friend of mine when we were talking about it. He said. The director is basically saying, you want breasts? I'll give you breasts, but in a way you've never expected before. And that happens. So that's the freedom of horror, is to do things that no one expects in ways that are almost ridiculous, but also terrifying.
Two things. Number one, he wanted breasts.
Exactly. Yes.
Number one, processes. Number two, the whole horror being sexy. For example, Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
Particularly with Barnabas, the whole biting of the neck was kind of sexy.
Oh, for sure. Vampires are so erotic. It's such a genre that everyone, there are so many people who want to be bitten by vampires in real life. Like I know so many people who want that. They're like, I would love to have an encounter with vampires, and I'm like, well, you know they'll kill you probably, right? But still, I get it. It's like that. Well, it's la petite mort, the little death that literally leads to their death. So.
Okay. Mr. Butler, question number two. Joshua, your work is recognized as gay and fat positive. How do these elements appear in homophobias, and why are they essential to the plot?
So they appear because every character in the story who is the main character is queer and fat. And they're there because honestly, they're not essential to the plot. They're not at all.
Hmm.
I could tell these stories with any other character in many ways,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
the reason that I do this is because I want to tell queer stories about fat characters without it being essential to the plot. I don't want another story that's about a fat character being sad they're fat. I want another story that's about a character who is fat and is doing exactly what any other character would do.
Hmm.
And so
Okay.
for me, it's really important that we don't sit there and dwell on a character going, "Oh, I wish I could lose weight," or now that's not to be like in Demon Doctor, my series that I do. There is a character called a Pish Taco, and he seeks out fat characters because he eats body fat, and that's the trait of the demon that he is, which is a South American character. It's a South American legend called the Pish Taco, and so it's like a fat vampire basically. And so I don't. In that case, I chose that character partially because we have a lot of fat characters in the show, and we wanted to celebrate a character that makes sense to have as a villain in this series. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that we sit there and dwell on the fact, oh, woe is me, I'm fat. And most of the time, most of the things I write are not about somebody being rejected because of their weight. They're being rejected for other reasons. And it's because I don't care about that world. I want to create a world where being queer and fat is perfectly normal. And if they don't like you, it's for other reasons.
Mm. I like that. I like that. That's forward thinking as well. Okay, here's my critique of homophobias. You ready? Okay, here we go.
Lay it on me.
All right. Homophobias, my audience, is a thoroughly entertaining, textured, and thought-provoking collection. The reader truly, you're like a fly on the wall. The reader's a fly on the wall, absorbing all of the goings on. Joshua, you immediately grab the reader's attention and you don't let go. You, my friend, are a naughty, cheeky, tantalizing tease. You take us on this journey of twists and turns, and we never know where we will end up. When the reader finally gets to his or her destination, we say, "What the fuck?" You've got that Hitchcockian vibe, Alfred Hitchcock vibe going on. Kudos, my brother.
Thank you. That's really overwhelming in many ways. I'm really so excited to hear that as your feedback because I really, really have so much fun writing these stories, and I love a good story that will bring you somewhere you didn't expect. And I think my brain goes in those directions, and I'm really glad that it. But I'm also always worried that I'm always worried that people will guess what I'm doing, and I've been very fortunate when people tell me I had no idea what you were doing in the story, and I'm like, yay, perfect, yay.
You really accomplished that. Okay, and I'll tell you how and why. Like you were saying, homophobia is divided into three sections. You have madness, mothers, and magic. Now, admittedly, since I'm a little cray cray, well, actually, a lot of times, but maybe just a little bit, I was particularly gravitated to the madness section, right? Okay, now, my favorite short story in the madness section is called The Court of King Dong. The Court of King Dong. You know what was surprising for me, Josh, with that whole thing?
Tell me.
Listen, for some strange reason, the words King Dong kept calling me, just calling me. They were saying, Wyatt, come over here. Wyatt, come over here. I don't know why, you know, but anyway, having said that, I want to jump into it because the Court of King Dong is about Gregory. He's doing this live stream, everybody. The first paragraph you wrote grabbed me and I laughed my ass off. That first paragraph was this: from his perch on the toilet to the left of the sink, Gregory squinted to read the comment. I said to myself, while he's doing that live stream, brother man could be taking a dump or jacking off. I mean, it made me laugh. But later, it went dark. I mean, very, very dark. So break down for us the Court of King Dong.
Court of King Dong is and the Court of King Dong is one of two stories which are reprints from earlier collections that I was in. The Court of King Dong was written for a collection called That Old House, the Bathroom, by Voices from the Mausoleum. They produce their own novel, short story collections, and Angel is the host behind Voices from the Mausoleum. She put out a call for stories, all told horror stories, all told in the bathroom, and it's an amazing collection because you would think that there may be very similar stories.
Right.
But the stories inside this collection are ridiculously diverse in terms of what they cover and everything. So, highly recommend That Old House, the Bathroom. But so the King Dong, the Court of King Dong, I had to make a story that was set in the bathroom the whole time. The whole thing was in the bathroom, and so I thought, well, what do you do in the bathroom? And most people use the bathroom for bathroom things. But in this story, Gregory uses the bathroom as his home base for his something like an OnlyFans live. He's doing. I don't specifically say what it is, but it's basically like an OnlyFans live.
Right.
And so Gregory's doing a live stream. He's waiting for 50 subscribers to come on because he doesn't do anything less than 50. He's got his standards, and that's his standards.
Okay.
As someone who's never done an OnlyFans, I just assume that that is what you do. So,
right.
So he finally gets his 50th person on, and the lights go out, and he's like, "Oh no, I was just about to do this, but now nobody can see me." And then the lights come back on, and everything seems normal, except that one person in the audience seems to know who he is, and that causes him a little bit of concern, and he's distracted because he had a really bad date just earlier, and part of the reason he came on OnlyFans live, live, we shouldn't say OnlyFans because it's not specifically stated, but the part of the reason he came on was to distract himself and earn a little money, so that way he could feel better about a bad date that he had. Right. But the person in the audience, in the viewership, keeps talking to him directly, and he doesn't like that because nobody knows who he is. They just think he's King Dong, not Gregory. And but somebody knows he's Gregory, and that's a problem. And that sort of takes us on a journey that he goes through in his head to discovering who the voice is and what exactly is lurking in the corners of the bathroom to surprise him.
Let me tell you, when I got to the end, I said, what in, whoa. I had no idea you would take us there. So everyone, you've got to read The Court of King Dong. You got to read all of Homophobias. Like I said, great job. Great
Thank
job.
you. It's a fun story. I love that story, and I will spoil you and tell you that I actually filmed the movie version of that earlier this year, and it's in
Oh,
post
wow.
production right now. So
Whoa.
we'll see a short film of the Court of King Dawn sooner rather than later.
I love it. Wow. Okay. Let's segue to Sidekick Productions. Joshua, what was the genesis for creating the company? And is there a specific meaning behind the title?
Sure. Sidekick Productions was created when I was getting back into the world of theater and production,
Uh-huh.
and I got into a festival with my play, All Folked Up, and it's a fractured fairy tales play. So I was like, I want to go in it with not just produced by Joshua Pangborn, but produced by a company. So I was like, now I guess now's the time to create my production company. I had
Okay.
created one right out of college, but that sort of disappeared because I broke up with my ex now,
Oh, okay.
and we were running the company together, so the company didn't exist anymore after we broke up. So
Uh,
a couple of years went by, and then I'm like, I'm ready to do a new company, but this time I want to make sure it's a company that has a purpose beyond just creating Joshua Pangborn's plays.
mhm,
At the
mhm.
time, this was specifically for plays. I evolved very soon after into film and television and beyond. But I came up with the idea of, well, let's do something about a mission that I really do believe in, and that's queer, fat positive storytelling. And so I said, okay, that's the purpose behind Sidekick Productions. We're going to do queer, fat positive stories.
Mhm.
Later, I sort of evolved that into queer, fat positive, horror adjacent, and horror stories
Oh,
because
okay.
I really love horror, and I wasn't ready to embrace it yet at that time because it felt that wasn't mainstream enough. I thought, but then at this point, I don't care anymore. But anyway, so I was like, okay, so what are we going to call it? And I thought about two things. I thought about Robin from Batman and Robin because Robin is my
Uh-huh.
favorite comic book character,
Okay.
and I thought about the fact that when at the time I was finishing my doctorate, and
Mhm.
so a lot of the papers I would write about were about secondary and tertiary characters in classical literature, and
Mhm.
I realized I was really drawn to the quote unquote sidekick characters, the characters who are not mainstream or the
Ah,
leads. And I thought, you know what? Let's focus on if I'm doing stories about queer, fat, positive characters, those tend to be labeled as the sidekick characters in mainstream cinema and mainstream stories. So I
mhm.
thought, you know what? If we're going to center stage them, let's center stage the sidekick. So Sidekick Productions.
I like it. It makes so much sense. Wow. Well, how do you believe Sidekick Productions is impacting the bear, big boy, sex positive communities?
I think that we have been very fortunate to have been embraced, especially for our series Skeleton Crew. That was our first foray from theater into television, and we've done 5 seasons of a very long form web series called Skeleton Crew. That has really touched people. I mean, our YouTube channel has over 5 million views from
Wow.
around the world.
Whoa.
We have over 12,000 subscribers on YouTube. I have over 12,000 subscribers on Instagram of people following me. And I get DMs and messages and emails all the time from folk telling me how much they appreciate seeing themselves on screen, appreciate seeing fat characters or big characters on screen. Um, I've had people tell me that they realized they loved and were attracted to plus size people because of the series. They
Mhm.
were able to come out because of the series that I make. So they found love because of the series that I make. So I am very grateful to hear these things from folk because it really feels like we're doing something that's beyond just telling some great stories.
Right.
We're helping people have awakenings in many ways.
Mm. Wow. I like that. Awakenings. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Um, Joshua, what are some reader takeaways from homophobias?
Um, I want you to take away the idea that fat characters don't have to just die first in horror movies and horror stories,
True.
which is often a trope that you see in them. And I want you to take away that fat characters can have sexuality and be sexy.
Mhm.
I want you to take away that there is a certain amount of erotica in most horror, and you're going to see that in this collection.
True. True.
And I want you to take away having a good time, because these stories hopefully will creep you out, and you'll come back for more.
Yeah, they do creep you out and you want to come back for more. That is so, so true. Where can we grab our copies of Homophobias?
Sure. Homophobia is available on Amazon. You can get that on there, paperback or ebook. Or if you would like an autographed copy of the book, you can DM me and I can tell you how you can order one from me directly. It will be a little bit more expensive because I have to, I'll be shipping it to you myself.
Right.
But if you are interested in autographed copies, then this is the way to do it.
Cool. Give us all of your social media.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram and on TikTok at Sidekick Productions. You can find me on Twitter at Sidekick Prod. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Sidekick Productions. You can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Sidekick Productions. And I think that's everywhere you can find me. I'm also on Facebook, but a lot of people don't use that anymore. So, but if you want it, I'm on there. So there we go. And we are also, I guess you can also find us on our website, sidekickproductions.org. And also, we are currently running a campaign for our next feature film, which is, again, inspired by a story from Homophobias. And it's a feature film that we're going to be making. You can help us at Indiegogo by going to thecontractfilm.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Man, you're busy. You are better than 2 bags of chips.
I like to think that I'm as good as 3 bags of chips, in fact. So
you got me there. Mr. Joshua R. Pangborn, I want to thank you for stopping by. Wyatt, man, you can come back anytime.
Thank you so much, Wyatt. I love being here. I always love talking to you, and it means a lot to see people supporting the community that you do. Your show is so diverse in the range of folk that you bring on to celebrate, and I love it. I'm so glad to see it every time you post about it. So
thank you, my friend. Yeah, so y'all, there you have it. You can find the official Wyatt podcast page at WyattEvans.com, the go-to destination for LGBTQ plus news, features, commentary, and entertainment. WyattEvans.com is visited by more than 100 countries on the regular. All I can say to that is, hey, baby. And at WyattEvans.com, you'll find my smoking hot, HAWT hot, Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels. And as you just saw on the top, the newest installment is called Shattered. I said Shattered. And y'all, Shattered is full of action, danger, intrigue, sexually charged situations, passion, and all of the wonderful elements that you're used to in the Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels. So get your new copy of Shattered. Now, you can follow me, your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans, all across social media, and poof, is right there for you to peruse, like TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And if you have any comments or whatever, you can hit me up at wyattonair@gmail.com. So until next time, y'all, woof, goddammit, woof, 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 woof. I said woof.